which is... Nope. Nope. Oh, sodding bloody car! Hello everyone and welcome back to Motorhouse, and as you will have deduced by my stylish attire and fine garments, that means that if I'm in the boiler suit, it means it's a workshop video. So welcome to the first workshop video of 2025. Ooh, exciting. So we're getting back up to speed with my 996 911 here. You may have seen in a previous video where I was bringing you up to speed with the engine work this car has recently had. So the next step is to get it through the MOT. Now, for our overseas viewers, the MOT is a roadworthiness inspection that all cars in the UK have to go through up until they're 40 years of age. This being, does some mental maths, approximately 27, still got a long way to go, so every year this needs to go through the MOT test. Now, even though the engine is back together and running great, there are some issues which need addressing before I can get an MOT certificate on the car, and that means that there are issues that need to be addressed before I can legally drive this on the road. So the good news is that there's a whole load of stuff that has been done, that was done now, I don't know, about 2 years ago. We've got fresh suspension on, nice fruity exhaust system, bunch of other tasty stuff, and I think actually on the whole the car won't need that much. But nonetheless, there's some jobs to do, so let's go over to the whiteboard and put down all the jobs that I've got to get done. All right then, let's go over to the whiteboard and let's for a minute talk a little bit about workshop project management. Now, I've done a bit of project management in various day jobs over the years, and I don't know about you, but when I'm facing a big list of things that need doing, it helps me, A, to put a list together, and then to tick things off as they're done. So I've got a whiteboard in the garage here. You can easily use an old bit of cardboard or whatever, but I think this is a really great thing to do if you've got a whole list of jobs that you need doing on your car, because then you're not going to miss anything, but also as you tick them off, you get a bit of a sense of satisfaction from doing it at the same time. So let's have a look what we've got to do. We've got new wiper blades need fitting, because the old ones were cracked and perished. That's an MOT fail. The horn for some reason isn't working. I think it's simply unplugged. Handbrake cables and guides and handbrake shoes. This is probably the biggest job. Unfortunately, with the car having been sat for so long, the handbrake seized on. And I think now the advice I got from Steve over at Cavendish is that she's going to need new handbrake cables, guides, probably shoes whilst I'm in there. Exhaust tips. The exhaust tips are not currently fitted. Didn't have time for that when the exhaust was fitted the last time, and it will actually fail the MOT without it. It could also, in the summer, end up melting the bumper, which we don't want that. Wheel arch liners. I'll explain all about the arch liners and the bumpers in a moment. That's a bit ugly. However, I can tick one thing off straight away, because off camera yesterday, because it's a boring simple job, I did the wiper blades already, so ta-da, that's already done. So what are we going to go to next? I suppose I should probably explain to you what the heck's going on with the bumper. Okay, so at the front end of the car, you may notice that there's a little tiny bit of a paint mismatch here. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in an earlier video, when the car broke down all that time ago, tried recovering it home using the front recovery eye. Here's a tip: don't ever try and flat tow your car with that, because what happens, particularly when you're flat towing it behind 2 tons worth of V8 Land Rover, is it rips the front bumper off. So don't do that. This bumper is what I could get my hands on at the time for a reasonable price. Amazingly enough, that is a genuine GT3 lip-on down there, which I'm sure some people will go mad for. I'm going to put a standard bumper back on, because I did manage to get hold of a standard bumper. It's not in the right colour, it's black, but it'll do for now. These also, look, these are the headlamp corners that got ripped out. Oh gosh, so tedious, so terribly tedious. So that's what's going on with the bumper. And then coming around to the back bumper, well, this is at least the right colour and in one piece. Unfortunately, there's loads and loads of previous owner parking scrapes and marks on here. These were on the car when I got it. I always anticipated having the bumpers resprayed. That's a story for another video. But what's a story for this video is you'll see the exhaust tips are currently missing. So I think that's going to be the first job to do. I think that's going to be a real feel-good first thing to tick off. Okay, so these are the exhaust tips and new clamps. Here are the tips for the exhaust. Now, the anoraks, the 996 anoraks are going to go, oh, I think you'll find that those are not the right exhaust tips for that car. And yeah, you're right. These, I think, are actually C4 turbo tips, these kind of fake dual exit things. Those were what were on the exhaust when I got it. However, I have got in the shed at home, with this being a 99, there would be really big, beefy looking single exit pipes, which I believe are year specific. God, it gets really boring, this stuff, doesn't it? It's only a damn exhaust. Who really cares? Anyway, I'll put those on when I have the time and can be bothered, which probably means never. What we will need for fitting these is some new clamps. These are some nice galvanized clamps that I managed to get easily enough, not too expensive either. So yeah, I'm going to get under the car and crack on. Okay, exhaust tips are on. Little bit fiddly, but not too difficult a job. Immediately looks loads better. Absolutely loads better. That will be an MOT pass. However, in the process of fitting them, I have noticed something. So you'll see there's quite a gap between, let me just get some light on here so that you can see. There is quite a gap between the top of the exhaust and the bumper. Now there should be something of a gap, but on a 911, a gap usually indicates something. And this side in particular, you can really see how, let me try and get some light on here so that you can actually see. That's a really significant gap. Now, what that usually indicates is that the engine mounts have started to sag. The engine mounts set over in the corner of the car. There's one just there. And if the engine starts to sag, how it's suspended is the exhaust tips start hanging a bit low on the car. Now, I need to dig back into my service history notes for this, because I've got a feeling that I put some new engine mounts on the car just after I bought it, in which case those really haven't done many miles at all before they've failed. Quite disappointing. So I will look at that, investigate that, probably one for another workshop update. But for now, we can at least come over to the board. And where are we? Yes, here we go. Exhaust tips. Tick. So, coming around to the front of the car, the front bumper is now off. So, this is unfortunately what happened when the recovery went wrong. You will see that this, which is the front crash bar, the tow hook, which is here, screws in there. Now, the only thing holding this entire front impact bar on, you see that little green looking bolt just there? There's one below it as well on those little crash cans. That is it. There's two that side, two this side. There you go. Those are the only things holding the front bumper on. So you can see is that if this ends up getting a particularly aggressive snatch off that mount there, what happens is the whole front bar rips off, bursts through the front bumper cover. Bit ugly, not nice really. Okay, well, that's the front bumper off. The next thing I'm going to investigate is why the horns aren't working. Anytime you have an electrical problem of some kind, work through it in a logical order, work from start to finish. So first thing is the horn button working? Now I have no idea if this is going to come across on this microphone, but I can hear inside the car when I push the horn button that there's a relay going. So what does that tell me? It tells me that the horn push buttons on the steering wheel itself are working just fine. It tells me the connection through the steering column is just fine. And it tells me that the relay presumably is fine as well, because it's going clickety clickety click. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the relay itself couldn't be faulty. You could have a relay that's energizing and the contact could be burned out, but the horn was working at one point, so I've just got to follow it down. What I'm going to do now is go round to the front of the car, because I did actually change the horns on this car because I had problems with this before. Now, if I come down here, you'll see, there we go, there's a couple of aftermarket horns up there. I'm just going to check that they're plugged in and working. And if they are plugged in, then the next thing I'm going to do is get a multimeter on there and see if we've actually got any voltage when I hit the horn button. Okay, the plot thickens. I have checked the horn connections and I can't actually see a problem. So I'm now going to investigate, just double check the obvious thing, make sure that a fuse hasn't blown. It's down here in the footwell on a 996. Got this little fuse chart here, so I'm just going to check that, see what's going on there. Are you ready? Yeah. So look, you just push the horn button, you'll hear the relays going. You okay? You're right. You're right. Yeah. You can hear that, yeah. Right. What should we do? Press and hold, and I'll just wallop the horns a bit. Yeah. Okay.
You've got some voltage there, Bob.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to have to do, isn't it? Right, hang on. Let me, yeah, they're on spade. Let me just pull them off. If I'll ever be able to get these back on, we'll have a see. Let's see what we've got. Ah, this is fun. Right. Okay, push for me.
I am doing on, off.
Oh, just press and hold it, please.
Press and hold.
Yeah, 12.5. Off. Yeah, on. Right. Bugger. It's the horn then, isn't it? Wouldn't it be wonderful if they were so easy to remove, which they're not at all. Yeah, turn the ignition off. Stop this a minute and escape.
Several days later.
Okay, a few days have gone by since I last diagnosed that the horns were faulty. One significant advantage of having a talented electronics engineer of a retired father is that you tend to leave things around and they end up getting fixed. Bonus. Dad had a quick look at the horns for me. Turns out that they were sort of full of water. After he opened the horns up, dried them out, managed to get them working again, they're now sealed back up with silicone sealant, so I don't know, will they last 5 minutes, will they last 5 years? Who can tell? So much aftermarket stuff is just, it's just junk nowadays. But anyway, that's got the horns up and running basically for free, which is a very, very good price right now. Very good price. So I'm going to bolt those on shortly. You've probably noticed that the car has now turned around. It's now facing the other direction in the workshop. I'll show you why. So off camera, I have made a start on trying to sort out the rear handbrake, and yeah, things have escalated a bit. I cannot get these rear discs off at all. Now, on a lot of German cars, this is no different. The handbrake mechanism is contained within the inside of the disc brake itself. So this section here effectively acts as a small drum brake within a disc brake assembly. So pros and cons of this. Firstly, something I love about Porsches, which allegedly is all part of the motorsport heritage of it all. The brake calipers come off super easy, provided that the bolts don't seize in. I've been lucky so far. The whole caliper is held in simply with 2 long bolts, which all you have to do is drop those out and the caliper comes off. Apparently that's a legacy from motorsport, so you could do very quick pad changes. I don't know if that's just a load of marketing BS or whether it's true or not, but either way, it does make it really nice and easy for removing these calipers. So I've just got these held up out the way at the minute so that we can do that. This rear disc is seized on. The shoes inside, even releasing the handbrake shoes as much as I can with the adjuster, which you do through this hole here, will not come off. Now, I had a quick chat with Steve over at Cavendish for this. Thanks very much, Steve, for being on the hotline for when I'm encountering issues. This back here, let me see if you can see it, this cable, this one, there we go, this cable here, that's the handbrake cable. I've disconnected those inside the car. You disconnect those through the center console, tap, tap, tap. And I was hoping that would free things off. It hasn't. So Steve's advice was simply, because I'm going to change the cables anyway, is just to take an angle grinder to them, cut them through. That hopefully might relieve any pressure here and allow me to get the disc off. There's another problem, is that I can't put this disc back on because, as you might see, in the process of trying to free the disc off, it's actually cracked, which sucks because these are quite expensive. However, I do have a cost-saving option available to me, which I will show you later on in the progress of this. For now, I'm going to have to get the angle grinder off and make cutting. Okay, so I'm under the car now, trying to weigh up the best way to free off these handbrake cables. So this is one of the cables under here. Hopefully you can see that. Here we go, let's go up a bit. So that's one of the handbrake cables just there. And then there's another one just there, which is this jobby here. Now, interestingly, I think this could be quite a tricky job. You can see there's this ferrule here. I'm going to call it a ferrule. It looks like those slide into potentially a metal tube that goes along the body. I've got to hope that those aren't seized in. The other area that can seize is on the back plate. There are little tubes that the handbrake goes into. Now, I have got replacement new ones of those, so that shouldn't be a problem. But I haven't done this job before. This is going to be interesting. So I've got the angle grinder ready. I'm going to start off simply by cutting the cables where they're obvious and accessible here, which hopefully that should initially free off what's keeping that back disc on. Take it from there and then see where we go. One of the problems I've got with this is that even when you have a look in the Bentley Press book about how to service the car, there is absolutely nothing about how to change these handbrake cables. I assume because the mentality was that they'd last for the life of the car, which they clearly don't. All right, I'll just go and take a cutting disc to my Porsche. What could possibly go wrong, eh? Climbing under the car. Coming in to cut my car up. Can I get the grinder in here? Woo! Right, okay. Can we get in? Great, this is going to be fun. By fun, I mean the other thing. I mean horrible. Right. Okay. There's not a lot of space under here. I'm just trying to see, can I get the grinder up and into place without cutting anything else? Yeah, all right. Let's have a go. get some light on what I'm doing. God, this is horrid. All right, let's have a go then. All right. Okay, that's one done. Let's try the other side. This one, passenger side, UK, is a lot easier to get to. All right, and I didn't even go through any brake lines or anything at the same time. Woo! Right, let's see if that's made any difference. I have cut those lines, so in theory that's taken the pressure off the shoes inside. So let's just have a quick feel by hand and see if it's done anything. Still, all right, let's give it a bit of a thrapes. Let's see if that's done anything. Oh, I reckon that might have started moving. Yeah, we're moving. Hey! Ha-ha! Oh, brilliant. Okay. Cheers, Steve, for the top tips. That's great news. Right, that is one off. Right, I'll move around to the other side and try and get that one off then. Great success. All right, coming around to the passenger side, I can absolutely confirm that doing the handbrake cable cutting trick works a treat. Now, just there, can you see that thing with the star wheel there? That's the adjuster. On the driver's side, when I tried to slacken that off, it would barely slacken off with the handbrake cables as they were. This is slackened off, no problems whatsoever. And just a couple of quick taps and I managed to get the disc off completely. Now, something to brace yourself for when you're doing this job is inevitably this is going to happen. So it'll go dark a minute because I've got to put the torch down. I came and touched, and I do mean touched, the backing plates, and yeah, they are absolutely notorious for just rotting through here at the mounting point. So, yeet, don't need that anymore. And it's held in by these fasteners here. Let me get some light on it so you can see these fasteners. These will almost certainly shear off when you try and undo them. Ask me how I know. However, on the plus side, so long-term viewers of the channel will know that I had a 996.2 a few years ago that was written off in a very unpleasant and very untimely way. These are the back plates off that car. They had only done maybe 500 miles, something like that. And when I salvaged the parts off that car, I held on to these because I suspected someday I'd need them. So that's great. Free parts is free parts. We like that. Round the front here, we've got the horns there waiting to go on. They mount to a bracket here somewhere. That's the big duct you have to take off to get to them. So that's to do. Am I going to do anything else this evening? I don't think I am. I think that's me done for the day. I'll pick up tomorrow.
The next day.
Whoop whoop, the horns, they are a honking. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Nice start to the day. Let me get that ticked off the list. Here it is, fix horn. We give that a tick. Hello everyone. Yeah, started today. I've done a little bit off camera because it's dull as ditch water and tedious like a lot of these car jobs are. But the horns are now bolted up, reinstalled. There they are, and they hide behind, you got this massive great duct, which I'm not going to try and manoeuvre into position right now. Or am I? Yes, it appears I am. Or am I? Yes, I am. Here we go. So this big air duct here, this bolts up here, covers up where the horns are. So I will do that off camera as well, because as you can see, it's a bit fiddly, bit of a pain in the bum. But yes, good. Right, horns are done. We've got another thing ticked off the list. Now, what else is going on? So, this morning, I had a quick rummage in my shed. Now, who's watching has got a shed full of car parts? Yes, you know you have, haven't you? Shed full of car parts. And this is my solution to the damaged brake disc and the worn old brake discs. So, I can hear it coming now. I can hear the Porsche owners group coming forward with pitchforks. Surely, Bob, you're not gonna fit used discs to your premium piece of German engineering? Shock, horror. Well, okay, I am, but maybe not in the way you expect. So, as I explained earlier, I used to have a very nice 996.2 Targa that unfortunately was written off a few years ago. I did all of the brakes on that car 500-600 miles before it was totally written off. Now, when my mate Des broke the car for me for spares, I kept a whole load of stuff back, including all the discs that I'd only just fitted. So these, although this is surface rust, these have only maybe done a few hundred miles. And actually, it's probably not the worst thing that I've been forced to change them. You won't be able to see it on camera, but these, at least I don't think you'll be able to see it on camera, these have, if you run your finger through, these have started to develop a little bit of a pronounced lip on the back. So they were probably on their way to needing changing anyway. But yes, with absolutely no shame whatsoever, I'm fitting these on because you're looking at a few £100 for a pair of rear discs, which right now is money I haven't got, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with these at all. Would I go out and buy second-hand brake discs for a 911, or for that matter for any car? No, I don't think I would. However, the fact that I know the history of these discs, I fitted them myself, I know that they've only done a few hundred miles, they're barely even bedded in. I've got no qualms with fitting these. So these will go on. I'm gonna, yeah, let's have a go. Let's have a go at cleaning these up right now. Now, if you've ever come to park your car up after it's been raining and you've left the car parked for a bit, you'll know that the brakes stick on. And that's because the kind of steel that brake discs are made of, the surface rusts very, very quickly. Now, obviously, these have been stored in a damp shed for 2 and a bit years, something like that. So there's corrosion on the surface of the disc. On both sides of it, it's not as bad as I was expecting, thankfully. Now, I could just bolt them on the car as is and try and get them to bed in. Just try and get the brake pads to bed in. I don't know how successful that would be. So what I'm going to do is I've got a fine wire brush in an angle grinder. I've just put some masking tape around the bell of the disc, purely for cosmetics. It's got like a painted surface on it. So I'll just save that a bit. And let's give it a quick buzz over and see what's happening. Yes, splendid, splendid, splendid. 2 nicely cleaned up brake discs, all ready to go back on. I am really happy with how those have come up. Look at that. Magic. So, those are ready to go back on to the hubs of the car. Unfortunately, the hubs of the car are not ready for the discs to go back on at all. I've got the whole rigmarole of sorting out the rest of the handbrake system now, so I'll be honest with you, I am going to do a chunk of that off camera because I predict much swearing. Right, these are fighting back exactly as much as I expected. I have managed to get one of the handbrake cable ends out of the car. This is the car end, and this little, come on, focus. This little cup ferrule thing sits into the shell of the car. Managed to get this one out with a lot of wiggling with mole grips. However, the one on the driver's side of the car is seized solid. I've just soaked it in plus gas. However, you may detect that I'm going to get brutal with this. I will not be beaten. Let us attack it with fire. I'm going to have to be very careful. I'm going to have to be very careful not to melt my gear shift cables.
Correct.
Okay, is that going to be doable? Yeah, I think so. All right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Any fuel lines there?
Nope.
Right. Okay.
All right, there we go. There we go. Oh, no way. Ha ha! Yes. Yes, come on. It's moving, it's moving. Hey! Ah, ha ha, brilliant. Yes. I got it. Oh, that's unsurprisingly, a piece of metal that's just been heated up with the blow lamp is quite hot. Who would have thought it, eh? There we go. Ah, yes. Great success. Okay, let's have a look around at the passenger side, shall we? So, this is the arrangement. You can see is that the disc brake and the drum fits on there, and what actually actuates inside the bell of the disc brake are Handbrake shoes. Now, if you've ever actually serviced a handbrake, you will probably see what I'm seeing, that all of this looks dry and like it hasn't moved in a long time and all very seized, which is exactly what is happening actually. So I'm going to have a go at stripping this down, seeing what happens. My concern at this point is regarding the retaining springs. So we've got a spring there, tensioning spring, another one this side. Now I'm going to have a little bit of a rant here. Something that really winds me up with Porsches is price gouging, right? Now, you are not telling me that that spring, and that spring costs any more to make than the equivalent spring set for something like a Golf, for example, right? Or a whatever, a regular production vehicle. Now, interestingly, these handbrake shoes, I'm not kidding, are shared with a Volkswagen, a very late Volkswagen Beetle, 924, 944, pretty much everything Porsche made for about 30 years. You can get a fitting kit for a late Super Beetle for $8.99. Do you want to know how much the fitting kit is for a 911? 80 quid. Yeah, I'm being serious. 80 quid for, what is it, 4 springs? Absolutely out bloody rageous. And that kind of stuff really, really winds me up. So I am hoping that when I take these springs off, they're going to be in good condition and reusable, because if they're not, well, let's just say that I'm not going to be very happy. Round at the hub, things have gone almost exactly as I hoped they wouldn't do. Everything has come apart. So we've got, there's the adjuster. That's all a bit scuzzy, rusted a bit. The retaining springs, I bet you're glad I'm really well prepared for this. This is super professional. Here we go. The brake shoe retaining springs, those thankfully came off in one piece, which I'm quite relieved about because those were the most expensive springs. Even that spring came apart just fine, which is great. unfortunately, this one, when I came to remove it, the ends have broken off. So I'm going to have to try and get hold of replacement spring pretty sharpish. This is actually the mechanism that expands the handbrake shoes themselves. This, when I took it out, was completely seized up, and it's still a bit tight now, so I'm going to soak that in oil and try and free that up before I fit it back. Now, come down to the car with me whilst I unclip you from your mount. Here we go. Right, come with me on a magical journey into brakes and Porsches and many wonderful things. So, round the back, there's the brake tube. This one here, the handbrake tube, you can see there. That I'm probably going to have to remove. I've got new ones of those. There's the other end of the handbrake cable, which is obviously clearly seized into that. But also, that, I don't know if you can see it, there we go. There's the hole through the rear of the hub. That was absolutely clogged up and nasty as well. So it's going to make perfect sense to have a go at removing this. But you know what? I think I'm just going to go straight on, get the blow lamp on that, try and get some heat into it, see if I can break it free and then remove it. I'm not going to lie, it's been a bit of a chore, this job. Nope. Nope. Don't burn the bloody CV joint, boot. We're going to try a different technique. We're going to try a drift in the hole in the hub instead, because I'm tightening the mole grips down on that tube, and all it's actually doing is flattening. So I think if I can manage to get the right size drift down the hole, maybe get it onto the edge of the tube, see what happens. It was around this point that I realised that actually I was tired, I was fed up, I couldn't really be bothered working away on this car anymore. Sometimes you have to know when to down the tools, step away and come back for another day. And so that is, yeah, that's exactly what I decided to do. You join me again the following day. It's a few days later. And I'd be lying right now if I said that everything was going to plan. It really isn't. Off camera, I've had another full day working on the car, and honestly, not a huge amount to show for it. Let me illustrate to you the problems I'm having. So, this here, this is one of the handbrake tubes. So these push in the back of the hub, and the handbrake cable fits in the end. Now, this is the one that came out. This may give you an idea of what I'm facing. That's the length that broke off in the hub. And what I've been trying to do is clean out the hub, clean it up to accept new handbrake tubes and cables. Now, yesterday, I thought I might be making some progress. Progress was very slow. I was cleaning up one of the hubs. I managed to get one of these handbrake tubes installed. I felt enough, but as soon as I fitted the new cable, the tension was too great and it just popped this tube out the hub. It's been a complete nightmare. When you come down to the car with me, and I'll try and show you what I'm on about. So just there is the new handbrake cable. I'm thinking to myself, I'm doing all right. We've got new handbrake cable in. It's threaded up inside the car. Everything's great, right? Well, not so much. Let me see if I can maneuver down. Right, there you go. There's the handbrake cable tube, which I thought was going great. However, it just won't stay located in the hub. And I think the problem is that I just haven't cleaned enough of the old broken material out of the hub enough. Here's the problem. That handbrake cable tube there is made from a material called sintered metal. It's basically like a like a powdered moulded metal, if you can imagine that. And 27 years or more of being in this hub carrier here, the two have just fused together. And as you could see from the end that's broken off, there was no removing it. So there's the remains of that still in there. Now, what I've been trying to use to clean it out has been the world's oldest rotary tool. I'm not kidding, this is genuinely from the 80s. This is vintage stuff that we had knocking about. I've been trying to clean the hole out using these tips, and it's not been going so great, if I'm being honest. However, this morning a friend lent me something that I think is going to stem the tide. Oh, and this is it. Look at this Milwaukee goodness. Look at all of this. So I've been lent these beautiful Milwaukee die grinders. So I've got a straight grinder. This I don't think I'll be able to fit in the space. However, behold, right angled die grinder, variable speed, if I can figure out how to get it to work. As well as, I'm not kidding you, even a set of Dormer tungsten carbide bits. Tungsten carbide bits, oh, that's great, that is. That's bloody brilliant, that is. So I reckon these, in combination with this, I should be able to really clean that hub carrier up now and hopefully get enough diameter and depth to get those handbrake cable tubes installed properly. So I'm going to crack on with that. Wish me luck. I'm fed up of this job now and I just want my bloody car back on the road. Ugh. Look at that, that's actually a big chunk of the tube that's come out. Amazing, amazing. Well now, hasn't that done the trick? Here we go, that is really in the hub now. And I don't know if you'll actually be able to see it on camera. The end of the tube is now visible where the handbrake cable comes out. That's made a massive difference. That die grinder has really helped. If anything, it's now maybe just very slightly loose in the hub. I've staked the end of the handbrake cable tube over so that I could tap it in and make a bit more of an interference fit. I'll see how that feels once I've all built it up.
Dramatic foreshadowing, this was to become a problem later on.
One side handbrake cable is now in, so I've just got to theoretically rebuild the cable mech this side, and then that's built up. Yeah, okay, we're making progress. Well, I'm not sponsored by Milwaukee. I mean, I wish I was, but if ever there was a case of the right tools helping the job out, this is it. I've used their impact guns for a while now, but these little handheld grinders are outstanding. So, as you can probably see from the huge amount of metal shavings that are around, I've managed to clean the other side hub up, and there's the handbrake tube here and cable installed. And very exciting. Very exciting, is it though, Bob? Is it actually exciting? Is anyone really excited about handbrake cables? Really? Really? Well, if you are one of those people that gets excited by handbrake cables, ooh, there they are. We've actually got the handbrake cables, the new ones, now appearing back up inside the car, which is fantastic news. That is a significant step forward now. What's next, thinks I? Possibly building up the handbrake shoes. Let's have a look. So, re my previous ramblings about outrageous inflated parts prices. Here's a good example. So, Porsche genuine parts they want for the handbrake shoes, nigh on £200, which is insane. I've got these aftermarket textile ones, shows the camera. You see, I'm like one of those influencers, aren't I? There should be like a makeup tutorial or something. Here we go. Replacement handbrake shoes. These, because again, they're shared with all kinds of cars, not just Porsches. I think these were about 30, 35 quid delivered. You really can't argue at that. What I can bloody argue with is the cost of the ruddy springs. I got fortunate is that most of the springs came apart in one piece, but this handbrake shoe spring, one of them on one side broke. I hadn't got the other side apart, so I thought best get some ordered in. Now thankfully these are available as a pattern part, but even then, 2 of these springs by the time they were delivered were knocking on for 40 quid. So these 2 springs actually have ended up costing more than the shoes. What are you going to do? Anyway, I've got them now at least. So I suppose the next bit is going to be rebuilding the handbrake mechanism assembly, refitting the shoes, seeing how I get on with that. I can't see anything could go wrong. Ah, the joy of pattern parts. Remember how I was telling you about how these aftermarket brake shoes were only sort of £35 versus 200 odd for the Porsche ones? Well, I would like to think that at £200 the Porsche ones would fit perfectly. You would hope so, wouldn't you? Because the aftermarket pattern ones, they don't. Here's the problem. The little adjusters, the material, I don't know if you can actually see that, the thickness of the material on the backing is too thick for those to fit into the groove of the shoe. So I've gone over to the bench grounder and just fettled them a bit, and now easy, beautiful fit. There we go. So that's a nice fit now. Pain in the arse, takes you more time fettling the parts. However, for 1/10 of the price, I'll go and grind them up over at the bench. This may not look like much, but good grief, has it taken a phenomenal amount of effort to get there. This is the driver's side parking brake assembly, finally built back up on the car with a new, in inverted commas, backing plate, and oh good grief, what a nightmare this has been. This has taken, I'm not kidding, probably 2-3 hours to get all of this built up, and a lot of that I will put down to 2 factors. Firstly, not a lot of consideration has been placed on making this serviceable at all. It's a very old, antiquated mechanism that they've probably been able to get away with the design of for a very long time and not really done a lot at it. The second thing, which is every single section in a manual about refitting the parking brake shoes, it simply says assembly is the reverse of removal, which it just bloody isn't. Because I'll tell you what removal is. Removal is you undo a couple of these springs and they fly off, and you undo a spring there and it flies off, and the whole thing just falls apart. That is not how you assemble it back again. Now, I'm going to walk you through it because no one on the internet anywhere seems to have posted actually the way to get these back together. So, I'm going to try and have a go. Firstly, with the shoes off the car, you have to fit the springs. You have to do it. There's no way to clip them on once the shoes are on. I've tried, it doesn't happen. So fit the springs to the shoes. Secondly, fit the adjuster. You'll have to wedge it about. What I did is I put a screwdriver in here where the retaining spring is, and the same with the bottom to keep the shoes apart. And then you can just about lever and smack into place the adjuster. Then you can just struggle away getting the retaining springs back in. God, you can tell I'm tired. But this is absolutely fantastic news. I've got one side done. Hopefully I've now got the formula for how to do it. So this side is ready for the disc parking brake to go back on. But I tell you what, I'm going to go in and have some food.
Much later.
Well, will you look at this? The sun is shining, spring, it seems, is in the air, and boy do I want to get this car on the road. So let's get in the workshop. I'll show you where we're up to. So, where are we up to? Dad is working on a project of his own, another German classic project. Dad, at the age of 80, has decided that what he really wants is a motorbike, because of course he has. So this is a very nice BMW R65 LS that he's working on. If you'd like to see more about this, drop me a line in the comments. Not done anything on bikes before, but this is just lovely. So from one glorious piece of German chod onto another. So there's the car I'm working on, and the next job is to refit the disc brakes. Now, these are the brakes that I have cleaned up. You'll see on the inside here, I've also cleaned up the area that the parking brake adheres to. Adheres to, is that the correct word? It's what I'm coming up with on camera. If you come over to the bench, you'll see the problem. So, obviously earlier you saw I've cleaned up the faces of them. What I didn't do was clean up the inside faces, the bell of the disc where the shoes clamp onto. Again, it would probably eventually bed in itself, but to speed things up, what I've been doing is just using some sandpaper on the inside here to clean the surface up. So I've got one more to do, and then I'm going to start fitting some discs on the car. We're in a good position now. All the parking brake assembly is built back up over at the hub. I've got my repurposed dust guards, backing plates, whatever you want to call them, on the car. And I've got my cleaned up disc assembly. So you could bolt this straight on as is. What I always like to do first is the hub flange itself. I'll always go around with a wire brush, preferably a wire wheel in an angle grinder because it's quicker, and try and get that surface as clean as possible. Why do you do that? Well, because the mating surface needs to be as clean and as parallel to the disc as possible, because otherwise it will actually end up sitting very slightly at an angle. I'm exaggerating it dramatically, but if you can get that surface between the two as clean as possible, then it stands to reason that you're going to minimise potential wheel wobble, this, that and the other. Does it make a real world difference? I don't know, but it takes a few minutes to do, and well, why wouldn't you do something that's free and easy if it's going to have a benefit? So time to get the grinder out. Oh yeah, also yesterday I spent 15 minutes walking around trying to find my goggles, only to realise that I put them up on my head. I should know this, being an ex-cyber kid from the 90s, walking around with goggles on your forehead. Where are your goggles? They're on your forehead. Anyway, here we go. Right, lovely. That is looking really nice and clean, and you know, it's done in a minute compared to doing all of this with a hand brush. Right, let's see if this disc is going to go back on, shall we? This is always the worrying thing, because even though I've got the Handbrake shoes wound all the way back in, you're always a bit worried with aftermarket parts. Is the thickness of the friction material too thick? Is it going to go on? So, what am I going to do? Yeah, I've got to firstly line up not only the wheel bolt holes, but I also need to make sure that I've got lined up the points where the disc securing screws go. So that looks about right. Right, wish me luck. Yeah, of course. Oh, no, really? Just like that? Maybe? Is that on? I think that's on, you know. Wow, has that literally just gone on? I think it has. Fantastic. Here's a little point of contention. Well, let me just show you first. Look, these are the screw holes for securing the disc on. Now, if you've ever done this job, you'll know that 9 times out of 10, those are really badly seized in, and you've either got to use like an impact driver to get them out, or sometimes even drill them out. That should not be necessary. These screws here, technically speaking, aren't actually necessary. They're only useful for in assembly, really, just to temporarily hold the disc onto the hub whilst you fit the handbrake caliper, that's not the handbrake caliper, it's the service brake, idiot. Whilst you fit the brake caliper onto here. 2 tips. Okay, so firstly, little bit of copper grease on the screws, a little bit. And make sure you've got a really good fitting screwdriver, that's really important. Okay, so here we go, I'm going to show you on this one. So with some copper grease on that, thread that in with a really good fitting screwdriver all the way. Now bottom it and then just back it off a touch. That should mean that the next time you come to undo these, when you come to change the brake disc the next time, it will actually come undone. And remember, this doesn't need to be tightened all the way up because it's not doing anything other than locating the disc ready for you to put the wheel on. So these don't need to be massively tight, and they can't back out because the face of the wheel is up against it. I will never understand why people ramrod these up really fast. I don't know, maybe techs have a power tool that they just vrook ugga dugga. They don't need to be that tight. So little tip, make your life easier in the future. Don't ram these up hard. Okay, and then last screw, hopefully this is going to go in fine. Let's try this. Yes. Splendid, splendid. Tighten it down. Back a little bit. Oh, we have a side built up, everyone. Yes, yes. That's fantastic. All right, I've got to go over to the other side, build the handbrake shoes up just as I've done here, get the disc fitted on. I'm going to do that off camera, and then hopefully the next time you see me, I'm going to be ready for putting the wheels on and maybe getting this car off its axle stands for the first time in some days. I've lost track now. So inside the car we have the handbrake itself, and then if you have a look in here, this is inside the little glove compartment. Not a lot of light, unfortunately, but we'll see what we can do. This here is the handbrake adjusting quadrant, okay? And you'll see the 2 cables that came up from underneath the car, they attach to that, and as you pull the handbrake up, it pulls on the quadrant and pulls on the cables. Now, I have wound a little bit of pre-tension on at the back of the quadrant there with that nut. That's probably about as high up as you want the handbrake, really. How many clicks have we got? Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, that's probably about as many clicks as you want. And what's happening over at the hubs? Well, if we go over to this side, it's kind of moving a little bit, but I can feel that they are kind of tight. Let's go over to this other side, and that is locked hard on. Okay, so what does this tell me? It tells me that probably the hub adjuster on this side needs winding in a little bit. But what I'm going to do, which I haven't done yet, is take the handbrake off and then see what's happening. So handbrake is off. These should now be really nice and free. Let's have a see. So yeah, that's eased off. Now let's go and have a look over at the other side. And yeah, that's eased off as well. Okay, so I think go over to the other side, wind the star wheel up a bit, have a look at that. We might be in business, maybe. Oh, it was all going so well. It will not adjust up. What's the prognosis?
The problem is, Robert, that the tube that should sit in the the back plate or the hub
Yeah.
is sliding through too far.
I think that's what we've come to the
Yeah,
conclusion is, isn't it?
absolutely.
I was a bit concerned about it, but it just is.
Yeah.
And what that's doing is it's limiting the effective pull of the cable on this side. We know that's a problem because basically we took the disc off and the handbrake mechanism wasn't doing a damn thing, was it?
No, it wasn't. The other side's working perfectly.
Yeah.
The quadrant skewed round because of the differing effective cable length.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, I've set engineer Dad to what do we reckon the solution is? We've come up with a couple of ideas, but what are we going with?
Is to sleeve the guide tube
Yeah.
against the outer cable
Yeah.
and let that sleeve sit against the outside of the hub.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go and draw that in a minute to explain, but how are we going to do it? What have we what have we found?
I've got some nice copper fittings
Yeah, let's have a look.
that
Yeah.
won't corrode.
Yeah.
The external diameter of the tube in question is 14 millimeters. The internal diameter here is 15 millimeters. It will be perfect.
Right.
I've got several options to go at.
But wonderful. I've got to dismantle all of this again.
Bad luck.
Oh, sodding bloody car! Right, let me attempt to do my best Tony Hart. There's a pop culture reference for the youngsters and people who don't live in the UK. So, this is going to be terrible, but hopefully it'll explain. So, we're going to call this the back plate. This is actually the hub casting itself, okay? And this side is the wheel, that is the car side, okay? So there are these tubes which you'll have seen that fit in the back plate of the hub, and the handbrake cable comes through and has a clevis on the end thus, which then effectively operates a bell crank and activates the handbrake shoes like yay. The problem is that this tube here, unfortunately, when I cleaned out the old hole, it's gone just a little bit too big. And so the tube now isn't making a solid interference fit, which is meaning that when you activate the handbrake cable, the whole tube is moving rather than gripping hold of the handbrake cable and allowing this to move and operate the quadrant here. So what we're going to try and do, as you heard Dad explain earlier, is if this is the tube, we're going to slide another tube over it, which will provide what's called an interference fit. An interference fit is where two things are up against each other so hard that they won't move, basically. We'll go with that as an explanation. So you have an interference fit between the original Porsche handbrake tube and the copper tube we're going to use, and then hopefully this copper tube is also going to provide an interference fit with the hub. Now you might be asking yourself, isn't that a bit of a bodge? Yes, quite often this is engineering. Quite often this is what you've got to do, because really the only alternative to this now, to using all factory parts, is not only to completely disassemble all of the handbrake mechanism, but to take the entire hub carrier off, including the bearing and the drive shaft, fit a completely new back plate hub bearing carrier and rebuild it all up. That isn't going to happen, A, because of time, B, because of budget, and C, because I reckon with a bit more time and, I don't know, like a 50p bit of copper tubing, we can probably save the day. Am I going to save the day? Tune in next time on Motorhouse to find out.